Thank you very much, Earl. Good morning. It is indeed a great privilege for me to attend the NEC and SEC Treasurers Conference. And I hope that we all are getting blessed spiritually, as well as, with important information which we need, to further enhance our treasury roles in our churches. On Monday, Victor's second presentation covered the importance of accountability, and my presentation is basically a continuation of accountability, and see accountability in our local church levels and what the General Conference says about accountability. Accountability fosters a high level of integrity and confidence in leadership. It also helps to build effective governance and efficient functioning of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. One of the greatest requirements of church leadership is for members to be able to trust their leaders. People have a right to expect leadership by example, a walk that illustrates the talk. Setting a good example involves being accountable to God, to the church, and to one's employing organization. Apostle Paul urged the Thessalonians in 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 12, says, "Walk worthy of God who calls you into his own kingdom and glory." I would like to share a few definitions of accountability. The first one is, accountability means that people in positions of power can be held to account for their actions. Another definition is the fact of being responsible for your decisions or actions and expected to explain them when you are asked. In 2012, General Conference issued a document, and the title of the document was Transparency and Accountability, a global commitment of Seventh-day Adventist leaders. Let's see what they have to say about accountability. Taking responsibility for my actions and behavior. Realizing my actions speak louder than my words. Making only realistic promises and commitments. Keeping promises and commitments. Recognizing good performance and addressing performance shortfalls fairly and openly. Being held accountable for my stewardship of office. Stating clearly my views, positions, and convictions. Seventh-day Adventist Church leaders recognizes that constituents and other stakeholders want to have confidence in organizational leaders and their stewardship. As a part of global commitment, church leaders reached a consensus to strengthen the transparency and accountability. And for that, GCAS, Journal Conference Auditing Services Board, they recommended 4 points, how we can build the confidence in our constituents and our stakeholders. And to build the confidence, there are 3 key drivers, how we can sustain the confidence. And they are, the first one is organizational culture. The second is organizational control. And the third is organizational communication. Organizational culture. As a Christian organization, there is a greater expectation from each person, particularly leaders, to demonstrate exemplary behavior in transacting financial matters, ensuring they conform to biblical principles, legal parameters, professional standards, and denominational policies. The better the tone at the top, the better you can trust the better trust you can have in the transaction. What is tone? We see here that leaders in each organization sets the tone at the top of that culture as it relates to integrity, ethical values, stewardship, and transparency. When we set a tone, in our organization, in our churches, of integrity, how we can be transparent, ethical values, stewardship, then the next step comes training. We should be well equipped also in performing our duties. And if we are, if we set a tone, we are well trained, then members will trust. They will have confidence in our work, in our transactions which we do. Coming back to training, sometimes we go to churches, and I know some of you have experienced that when you're asked for the role, there is no support from the previous treasurer, and you have to just start everything from the scratch. We like to encourage you that as you move on and as the new treasurers come in, please help them to pass on the relevant, books, train them. If you don't have time, you can always, the church can get in touch with the SEC. I'm sure that can be with the NEC also, and then we can come down and train you. Because training is very important. You should be equipped that what you're doing. And once that is done, then members will definitely have a confidence in the treasury work in the church. We have also informed at the SEC to the pastors to please get in touch with us when there is a change, and I hope the same thing applies with the NEC also. Just want to read a text from the Bible. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 1 and 2. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 1 and 2. It reads, "Therefore, since it is by God's mercy that we are engaged in this ministry, we do not lose heart. We have renounced the shameful things that once hides. We refuse to practice cunning or to falsely God's word, but by the open statement of the truth, we commend ourselves to the conscience of everyone in the sight of God." Moving to the next point, which is organizational control. The Seventh-day Adventist Church and its family of institutions must each have internal controls and audit committee. The better the culture we have, the better the controls, will be. When appropriate organizational culture is in place, there is a greater appreciation of designing and implementing effective organizational controls. These controls consist of policies and procedures, which collectively are referred as internal controls. The internal control of the organization should not be designed to target individuals, but should focus on the objectives of providing reasonable assurance regarding reliability of the financial reporting, effectiveness, and the efficiency of operations and compliance with laws and regulations. If we go further into internal controls, there are 4 components of internal control. The first component is, it's not on the slide, but I'm just sharing that with you. The first component is risk assessment. The second is control activities. The third is information and communication. The fourth is monitoring. Suppose you have an event going on in your church, which involves some fundraising, some expenses to pay out, and all that. The first point when you have to think about is that you have to do a risk assessment. What kind of a risk is involved in this project? Is it a low-level risk, medium level, or high-level risk? And depending on the level of the risk, you develop the control activities. You set up the procedures. How you're going to be dealing with that project. For example, authorization of the department leader, proper invoices, receipts and all that. So you set up the controls. And the third thing is information, and communication. Complete and timely information is very important. What happens is most of the time, when there is not complete information and it's not presented on time, there are frictions. Misunderstanding occurs. To avoid that, it is very important to convey the complete and timely information and communicate that with one another. And the fourth thing is monitoring. Once everything is placed, then you monitor. The controls are there, properly communication is there. So you monitor all this, function. Once we place all these four components, this is called, we create a control environment in the church, especially in our treasury role. The third thing is organizational communication. Communication is the core of effective governance. Regular and open communication builds confidence inside and outside the organization. Communication, as I mentioned earlier, that timely and complete information should be passed on. And we see that there are different levels of where of our church, of our organization, and our different organizations, by which with which we share our communication. It is very important, communication, proper communication. Just wanted to encourage all of you to take some time out, and read this document, Transparency and Accountability, a Global Commitment of Seventh-day Adventist Church Leaders. This is linked, or if you Google that, with this title, you can find this document. Very, very insightful. So please take some time and read this document. Just waiting. I think some people are just writing the title of the document. Transparency and Accountability, a Global Commitment of Seventh-day Adventist Church Leaders. All right. Let's focus on our local church level. That how can we build the trust and confidence of our members? We have 4 quadrants here, 4 levels, we can say, and let's see which quadrant is the best practice, which we can do as treasurers in our church. We start with the bottom left, where it says, no records, no reports. Do you think it's a best practice? Not trusted, not trustworthy. Let's move to the top left, which says, report based on poor records. Report is based on poor records. Might be trusted by the members, but the reports are not trustworthy. Then going to bottom right, we have records but no reports. No matter how best your recording system is in the church, but if you don't, issue reports or prepare reports, there is no use of having that best system. Reporting is very, very important. The top right is records and reports willingly. On Monday, Victor, explained us that, if we report, willingly, that helps a lot, It helps a lot to minimize certain, questions, which are unnecessarily there, So with a willing heart, if we prepare and present the report, I think that is a best practice. accountability that builds trust. In our local church level, there are certain steps which we take in our treasury role. We record, we process, and then we report. First of all is that every Sabbath, we collect the loose offering and then we count it. And we record it in the deacon's book. And 2 people sign that, which is very important, not related. And then the treasurer reports that in the bulletin, that how much was the offering. Then the envelopes are open, the tithe envelopes, and are receipted in the receipt book. And the report is that we give the receipt to the donor. Please, when you issue the receipt, don't use the same envelope to return the receipt. Always give them a new envelope so they can use, for the next time. We have to keep the envelopes for 4 years before we discard them. This is a requirement by the HMRC, so we need to keep for 4 years. Yeah. So please, practice that to keep the envelopes, for 4 years.
I see that's caused a little bit of discussion here. What's the query? Okay, so the envelopes, just as a suggestion, if you just keep them all in, say, a box, just label it 2015, and in 4 years' time, security destroy that box. If you've got a problem destroying it, you can arrange to have it sent to my office, and we will have it security disposed. The reason why we need to have it is because it forms an important document in the audit trail of that donation. So if I give you the full audit trail to explain why it's important. So when the charities division of the Inland Revenue come and audit me or audit the conference on a regular basis, on average they come every 4 to 5 years. So it's a specific division of the Inland Revenue, specifically dealing with gift aid. Because in my conference, they are sending back to us last year, £2.6 million in gift aid. They will come and audit charities who they return that, because they want to ensure that the claims are valid. How can they ensure that it's valid? They will check to see the claim that Michelle, is Michelle in the room? Michelle's there waving the back. Michelle for SEC, and in the NEC, Joycelyn. Where's Joycelyn? At the back on the left-hand side. Yeah, you guys are completely opposite ends of the room. These guys process the gift aid returns. So they'll see that 2.6 million in the SEC has been claimed. How do we justify it? We justify it by the type. So there's conference treasurers in this room. They'll look to see that the tithe reports that you send to us, which we keep as well for 4 years, they'll see who we've made claims against. They'll then trace that to the bankings that you make. So we keep the bank slips as well. So we've got the copy of the receipts that you've got, and then we've got the bankings that you make. So they can see that the bankings tie up to the totals on your slips. What they can also ask for is to see, well, we've written Brother Smith or Sister Brown has given £100 on the gift aid system. They could also ask to see those envelopes. So we don't ask you to send us the envelopes to the office, but if they do ask to see the envelopes, they can go further back in the audits, in the transaction trail, to ask to see those envelopes. So we don't always ask for you to send them to us or to look at them, but the Inland Revenue Charity Division can ask to see those envelopes. That's why we ask you to keep for 4 years. Question? Primarily for gift aid purposes, yes. The auditors generally can also ask to see those. I think Victor, general conference policies, I think it actually says, you're going to tell me it's 6 years, isn't it? But as a minimum, at least 4 years, primarily for the inner revenue. But yeah, clarify. Oh, here. Yeah, sorry, I've got this, haven't I? Why did someone tell me?
I guess the challenge on the holding of non-gift aid is, at least in the south, I think the north too, is when sometimes people sign up for gift aid several years down the road and we go and back claim. And so we need to be sure that the envelopes are there, because if we're going to back claim without the evidence that the donation, or the comparable evidence that the donation was given in the way we said it was given, then we'd have a problem. So probably if we're going to keep them, we'd have to be consistent with all of them.
So we understand that. So it's just further enhances the audit trail.
So South England Conference, they employ somebody in the summer who when you get a new gift aid claim, the gift aid says everything I have given from the year 2000. Well, you can't go back to 2000 anymore, but you can go back several years. And so the South England Conference gets several £100,000 a year just examining back claims. And if the envelopes are thrown away, that somewhat weakens, shall we say, the strength of that claim.
The inner revenue can ask to see those envelopes. We have the receipts. We go back. We can. The government allows us to go back for every new person who joins gift aid, who've been faithfully returning their tithe and offerings through the gift aid, in the envelopes for 4 years, and they suddenly wake up today and decide that they want to sign up for gift aid. The inner revenue allows to go back now. It used to be 6 years. Now it's 4 years, and the envelopes provide further evidence of those donations going back over those 4 years.
I think the strength in practice, what Earl is talking about is the correct and best practice for sure. In practice, what happens, the Inland Revenue will come back and they'll select a number of churches. So in South England, maybe 150 or so churches, and maybe they'll select 3 or 4 of them. And then we have to provide good evidence. What they really will look at is the last 12 months. If they don't like what they see in 12 months, then they have the right to go back further years, up to 7, but we retain by policy 4 years. So if you want to be completely safe, then we hold them as long as we have room and can do it practically. But really the last 12 months is even more important. That's what they look at first. And if that's all right, then they're probably not going to bother.
At the moment, the last 2 or 3 audits by the Charities Division of the Inland Revenue, after speaking with the auditors after they finished their audit, at this moment in time, they are extremely happy. I've even asked them about their audits of the NEC, and they're extremely happy with the internal controls and the accounting systems, accountability systems that we have, and that they can trace the audit trail right from start to finish and backwards through the system. At the moment, they're extremely happy with our audit trails, and we want to keep it that way. Because at the moment, we're getting about 2.5 million. I don't know what the NEC get, but these are substantial numbers, and we want to ensure that those income streams continue. Millie, and then red t-shirt behind you. I can't quite see your face.
My question is quite simple, actually. Because we're using the church file system, and everything on the envelope is recorded into that system, can you do your audit from that? Or you still need the envelope to double check?
All the documents, the receipts, and the envelope, going right back to the envelopes, if you're using the electronic system, they're all part of the audit trail system cycle. So they are all important documentation.
Right. I know that. I know the importance. Well, I'm just wondering because it's a lot of envelopes. I've got a big church,
Yeah.
and for my first year, this is my second year as a treasurer. My first year, I've got 2 big boxes in my garage at the moment because, as you know, we don't have a church at present. Maybe when we go back to
It's
the
coming
church, I'll
soon.
have
It's finishing soon.
yes, it's coming soon, but soon is not soon enough for me. But when we go back, I'll have storage space. But right now, it's in my garage, so which means every Sabbath I have to store it accordingly. I don't mind storing it, but I just wanted to know whether the trail could be picked up from the church bar. And the other thing is,
So the trail from the church clerk.
Church pulse system.
the church fund system,
church pulse
because
system.
if you have everything in there, it basically is double.
Yeah, the
Okay,
church
fine.
pulse system is the same as if
Michael
you
is
using the manual system. It provides the documentary evidence of the donations that you're making. All we're saying here in this instance, the type envelopes is also an important part of that audit trail and can be requested by the revenue auditors.
Okay, fine, thank you. It's
Yeah.
quite clear. No, secondly, my second
Yeah.
part of the question is receipt books. I've never seen one. I don't have any.
Because you're on the church pulse system.
So, because I'm on the church path, I don't need a receipt book.
No.
Fine,
no,
because
yeah.
I generate my receipts from the system.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Red T-shirt behind you.
My question was, I think part of what Millie have said, we are renting like a place, we don't have our own church. So those receipts, envelopes, we need to keep them. But whatever we're doing in that place, I need to take it home. So keeping these receipts for this envelope for 4 years, which storage? Because I've got a small space of my own. So how is the church going to help us? I don't know, because I can't keep them anyway. I don't have any storage.
Yeah, can I suggest in the first instance discuss it on the church board where it could be kept. Maybe someone else who has some other responsible officer who the church board could approve to store them, but they need to be kept at minimum for the 4 years.
I do understand, but all members of the church are the same. You take it from one person to the other. No one wants to take that responsibility at all.
Yeah, discuss it on the church board and see if we can come up with a solution in the first instance, and then come back to me after you've discussed it. Yeah. Okay, this afternoon we're going to have a questions and answer session on Rejoice Now will be here, but primarily on any of the presentations or anything you want to ask us this afternoon. So please do write down your questions and save them for this afternoon. But on this topic, you can continue asking after questions.
Thank you very much. All right. The next step is that deposits funds at the bank. We prepare the deposit book and we take the money to the bank, and then we see our bank statements, in the form of report, where we can identify the banking which has been done. Then we process, on our cash book, or if you're using any software, like big churches like South have their software, Croydon Church, and then we enter, on our system, on our spreadsheet, all the information, all the offerings which we have, and then we prepare a financial statement, or we report to the board, to the members about our offerings, about our tithe and all that. So we share the information. All right. Other things which we can implement to further, improve our accountability or our internal control is one of the forms which we have is expenditure requisition form. If you have seen the local treasurer's guidebook, on page 26 you'll see this form. I don't know if you have this in the north, sir. The local treasurer's guidebook, but if this form, or you can design a form where you have the authorization, you have the receiving signature of the member who brings the invoice or the receipt, and then attach the appropriate invoice or receipt with that and file it. Then we have income and expenditure statements, sorry.
Send them out to you. Oh, yeah, or any of my department, and we'll get them sent out to you.
Thank you. All right. On Monday, Wedley, when he was doing his presentation, he explained about the financial statement and the importance of the financial statement, especially reporting to the board and all that. This is a simple format, where we can have the total income, total expenses, and if we minus our expenses from our income, so there is a balance, and that balance should match up with the bank statement we have. So in our board meetings, we need to present a financial statement where we have our income minus expenses, the balance, and also a copy of the latest bank statement, minuted in the board meeting and or signed off by the pastor of the church. The system of accountability is important to as we said, to the local treasurer to be accountable to the church for the financial resources. To the church board in assisting them to make financial decisions to benefit the church. The financial report, along with a copy of the latest bank statement, should be presented in every board meeting and should be signed off by the pastor and minuted in the church board minutes. Important for the auditors also to assess the system of internal control, verify compliance with statutory requirements, and be able to express an opinion on the financial activities and state of affairs of the church. In NEC, we also have, we issue a report which I'll mention on this slide. So conference treasurers, they prepare the report on a monthly basis and send to the conference their tithe report. We process that and we report it to the SEC Executive Committee, BUC, and TED. On a quarterly basis, we prepare church by church tithe analysis report. On that report, we show 2014 tithe, along with 2015 tithe, the membership, baptisms, gift aid figures, and any outstanding reports from the churches. And we send it to pastor, elder, treasurers, SEC Executive Committee, and SEC website. That's how we do the accountability of our tithe to the members and to the pastors and elders of the leaders of the church. To conclude, just want to leave a few questions with you to ponder upon and see, how can you promote transparency and accountability as leaders in your church? The first question is, as a church leader, how can I promote as well as model transparency and accountability? What policies, practices, procedures, or structures would you recommend to support transparency and accountability in your local church? And at the end, to conclude, I'm just going to use a quotation by Ellen G. White, and it says, "This is a time when the work of God should be conducted with the strictest integrity by every conference, a time when there should be the closest observance of the law of God on the part of every worker." Amen.